Greetings, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bridget Cabrera, she, her, hers, and I'm the Executive Director of Methodist Federation for Social Action. We're so excited to be co-hosting the series of webinars with our coalition partner, United Methodist for Kairos Response. Methodist Federation for Social Action is a national progressive social justice nonprofit that mobilizes justice-seeking people of faith to take action on issues of peace, poverty, and people's rights within the church, the nation, and the world. We have a few announcements concerning our call together today. We encourage you to turn your videos off if you are able to. This will help with our internet connection. We have a lot of folks on the call, and we have a really great program for you today. We are recording this webinar, and you will be receiving some emails with that information. It'll also be on our websites, so you can access this in the future and also hopefully share this out with others. As I know a lot of you are introducing yourselves in the chat, and so once we start, once I turn it over to John, we really ask that you, if you want to speak to each other individually, and to reserve the chat after we get started just for questions when we get to that point. That will help us kind of manage the questions. As you come up with questions, feel free to type them in the chat whenever, so that when we get to that point, they will be there. You don't have to wait until we get to that section. And we are offering closed caption. If you would like to access this, click closed caption option and click show subtitles to view. And we apologize in advance for any spelling errors or mistakes in the closed caption. And we are continuing to learn and improve how we do closed captioning. Welcome again, and I will turn this over to our moderator, John.
Hi, thank you, Bridget. John Wagner. I'm one of the co-chairs of United Methodist for Kairos Response. We are an organization not officially affiliated with the United Methodist Church, but we relate to them. Our name indicates that we are responding to the Kairos document, Kairos Palestine, and their urgent request to do what we can to help alleviate the suffering. We have engaged in nonviolent action, boycott, and divestment. We've helped our denomination to engage in those. We also work on making for authentic Holy Land travel, moving toward legislation in our government, the United States government, that would be favorable to Palestine, and various other educational efforts, including this one. So I'm going to get to this right now. I am so pleased to be able to introduce the Zoughbi family, and they will be highlighted here pretty soon, but first I'm going to go through just a few comments about them. Zoughbi Zoughbi is the founder of WIAM, the Palestinian Conflict Transformation Center. WIAM is a grassroots organization which believes in multi-track diplomacy. Zoughbi has done a lot of graduate work in interdisciplinary studies in different universities around the world: Notre Dame University, Brandeis, Eastern Mennonite University, Catholic University. He is a human rights activist, a nonviolent activist, traveled around the world as a lecturer and speaker on interdisciplinary issues, author of many books, booklets, and manuals on peace and justice related topics. He's a trainer, facilitator, lecturer, as well as a trainer in interdisciplinary spheres. Elaine Zoughbi, his wife, is originally from South Bend, Indiana. She has a BA in accounting from Manchester University in Indiana, a Master of Nonprofit Administration from the University of Notre Dame. She married Zoughbi Zoughbi in 1990, and not without difficulty began a married life in Bethlehem. They have 4 children, Marcella, Tarek, Lucas, and Rafiq. Zoughbi and she celebrated their 30th anniversary this past summer, but then had to celebrate from 2 different continents because there were active appeals courts over 6 months to return to Bethlehem, and they were repeatedly denied until very recently. At the end of October, she was given permission to enter the country via Jordan, on November 8th and received a 3-month restricted visa, but she is here with us today. Tarek Zoughbi was raised in Bethlehem. He received his bachelor's degree in economics and peace studies from Manchester University, returned to Bethlehem, worked as a project and youth coordinator at WIAM. In addition, he taught English and economics at a local high school. Recently, in 2020, Tarek graduated with his master's in international cooperation and development from Bethlehem University. He's been very active in various speaking engagements, both here and abroad, in raising awareness and promoting issues of social justice. Rafiq Zoughbi was born and raised in Bethlehem, graduated in August 2020 with a BS in electrical engineering from Purdue University, West Lafayette, Indiana. He is visiting with his family in Bethlehem and hopes to be able to continue his education, pursue his interest in working toward the ultimate goal of increasing the efficacy in the use of solar panels and renewable sources of energy for generating electricity while increasing the cost effectiveness of alternative eco-friendly means. So we are so proud to have them. I know they're also very proud of their daughter, Marcella, who cannot be with us today, and they may want to say a word about that. With all that, I'm going to turn it over to the Zoughbi family, and however they want to present, and there will be some time for questions in about 30 minutes or so.
Well, hopefully you can all hear us. And first of all, thank you for having us here, and thank you especially to this network that continues to be active and continues to create platforms for such discussion and such awareness to be held and to be raised. My sister Marcelle isn't with us at the moment because she's actually currently teaching and was unable to reschedule her time. But just to give you a background, she graduated from a Mennonite university in Indiana, Goshen College, which some of you may be familiar with, and then went on to receive her first master's degree from Notre Dame in international relations, and then came back and graduated in 2020 from Bethlehem University with a master's in international cooperation and development, and is currently working as a high school and elementary teacher, teaching English for the elementary school and then teaching Model United Nations and a little bit about human rights to the high school, as well as educating doctors and teaching them English. And my brother Lucas, who is not here with us, he and his wife Jessica currently live in Michigan, and they are studying at Michigan State University and both working towards their PhD in psychology. And Lucas just attained his master's in psychology from the university, and we're also very proud of them. So thank you again for having us here. This is the Advent season, and this is a very exciting time for us at our family as we celebrate for Jesus' birth, but especially since we come from Bethlehem. We have a few pictures and videos to share in a little bit, but just to give you an idea, much like across the world, and maybe even in the US and the UK, through the Advent season, our churches opened their doors. Because of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, this has been a bit more unusual than past years, but we have church services almost every day in different churches at different times of the day so that people can go before work, during work, and after work, depending on their schedule. And then this leads up, of course, to Christmas. And here in Bethlehem, because of different denominations, we actually celebrate Christmas 3 times. Mm-hmm. So if you're one of those people who think celebrating Christmas once a year isn't enough, you should come here. You'll have ample opportunities to celebrate it. Usually for our Christmas procession, the day of or after Christmas Eve is what? No. Christmas Day. We don't really have the Christmas Eve part here. It's more of celebrations within the church through praying. But Christmas Day, we have the scouts from especially Bethlehem and from Jerusalem and from some of the surrounding areas that will come to Bethlehem, and they'll start a procession.
That's Christmas Eve. That's on Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve?
Yeah, Christmas Eve.
And they'll start a procession from Star Street all the way to the Church of the Nativity. And so we're going to share a screen just to show you what this looks like. And this is the traditional route that Joseph and Mary and baby Jesus in Mary's womb took to come to Bethlehem. So hopefully you'll be able to see the pictures. This will just take us 1 second. Here we go. So this is, of course, the Nativity, but we'll start from the beginning. So here is the beginning of Star Street. This is the traditional route that the Holy Family took on their way to Bethlehem. And so usually it's decorated with different Christmas ornaments with different beautiful lights. And there are always festivals leading up to the celebration of Christmas. And here's the historic or traditional archway, the entry into Bethlehem. And then we get to Manger Square and Nativity Square, which is what you see in front of you, with this fairly large church complex built on top. And this is the old church that is built on top of the grotto or the cave in which Jesus was born in. And then here, this is the grotto that is under that church that we saw a minute ago where Jesus was born. So we'll stop sharing the screen and I'll let someone else continue.
Yes, Christmas in Bethlehem is something unique and different. Bethlehem is the capital of Christmas in the world. And, you know, most of the time, the Manger Square is full of people from different walks of lives, from different continents, from different countries, together celebrating the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Savior. And for Christmas for us, it is emancipation. It is the good news despite the difficulties that we live in. Jesus was born at the time when there was a Roman occupation, where there was Herod trying to kill him. So despite of all of that and the massacre of the kids, Jesus was born and he was the King of Peace. He was the Savior. And so therefore, we celebrate that in Bethlehem through different traditions. We have traditional, kind of, what do you call it, that we inherited from our elderly, and also a spiritual trip. The spiritual trip, really, I cannot express it because we live in it without any problem. The spiritual trip, the spiritual journey is a journey of transformation where the bad news is transformed into good news. And so it is really is uplifting always to celebrate Christmas, to hear the Christmas choir in Manger Square, the hymns. And many times people will ask, what kind of Christian you are? And I would say, you know, I am following the Catholic order and enjoying the Byzantine rituals, as well as learning from the evangelical preaching. So this is our identity as Arab Christians in this area. Although we are small in number, we are endangered, but our presence is qualitative rather than quantitative.
And in modern day Bethlehem, as Tariq said, when we celebrate Christmas, it's very special here. And I would say there are 4 main events when it comes to celebrating Christmas. There's the Christmas lighting ceremony, which we have a video of, I believe, right? That we will show you soon. There's the scout procession, which Tariq talked about, where the scouts and the patriarchs walk the same path that Mary and Joseph walked to bring Jesus to Bethlehem. There is a series of kind of concerts that also happens, I believe, on the 23rd in Manger Square to celebrate Christmas as well. And then finally, there's the midnight mass that happens Christmas Eve and goes into Christmas Day.
Christmas tree lighting, it will be good to share with you.
So I should warn you, if your computer is on a very loud volume, this has a few firecrackers in it, and so it might sound quite loud. But here we go. This might take a minute. There we go. Hopefully you can all see the screen.
was this year's Christmas tree lighting, which just happened last Saturday. Normally at this event, we have at least 4, 5, 6, 7,000 people in attendance. But this year, because of coronavirus, I think they limited it to 50 people. So it was a much different celebration. And normally we have dignitaries coming from all the consulates, from churches, from UN delegations, and we have different performances, and we have different speeches, all leading up to the Christmas tree lighting. So this year was very different just because of the pandemic. One of the things I wanted to mention is, since I grew up in the States, Christmas that I used to celebrate in the States is different than the focus of Christmas here. The focus in Bethlehem is much more on the religious celebrations and the family. So when I first came here, which was in 1986, there was very little gift giving. So it was sort of a shock to me to realize that gift giving wasn't a big part of Christmas. But I very quickly learned to appreciate, you know, the religious ceremonies and just focusing on the reason we have Christmas and how special it is to celebrate Christmas in Bethlehem with the patriarchs, with the different church groups, with the procession, which Manger Square on Christmas Eve for the procession of the patriarchs to the Church of the Nativity is packed with people, and it's also a place where you see relatives, friends. It's just a great gathering. It's a very happy occasion. I don't know what they're going to do this year. It may not happen the way it normally does, but in the past few years, it's just been a very happy occasion. And then on Christmas Day, the focus is really on your own family group. So your nuclear family, your extended family, you get together, you visit each other, you wish each other Merry Christmas. So yeah, it's much more about family and Jesus and religion, and yeah.
If I may add to that, one of the things that I appreciate about the celebration here is oftentimes when we look at the celebration, especially in the globalized and maybe Western world, it becomes much more of a commercial celebration. But here we're still able to maintain its spiritual meaning and spiritual celebration while also working towards inclusivity and celebrating diversity. Because even though the number of Palestinian Christians number less than 50,000, right around 46,000 people, this is still considered one of the national holidays in its spiritual entity for the Palestinian Authority, for the Palestinian people, even though that's 46,000 out of 4.9 million people. And so even during our church services, even during our celebrations, it's not just the local Christians that are there. It's also our Muslim brothers and sisters who are there celebrating with us, who we are welcoming into our homes and welcoming this celebration together and taking it to continue to strengthen the community that we have and to strengthen the ties and relationships that we have, and most of all, to find more reasons to celebrate, especially this year with COVID, with the pandemic, and with the ongoing conflict.
Yeah, it is not based on gift giving, but of course, because we received the priceless gift, our Lord Jesus Christ, as a baby. And when we talk about Christmas, we talk about the 4 family churches that we are celebrating with, because Christmas is more inclusive than any other thing. We have this 24th for Catholic and evangelical churches, Protestant churches, the 6th for the Orthodox churches,
January 6th.
January 6th, thank you. And the 18th of January for the Armenian churches. You know, it is amazing that such a tradition keeps going, despite that we would like to have one day for Christmas, but many say you know, according to the status quo, we should keep these 3 days of Christmases. And on the same point, that because we are surrounded by the wall, and the main entrance to Bethlehem will be opened to receive the patriarch on these 3 occasions. So maybe we should need to have 360 Christmases in order to have the main entrance to Bethlehem open all the time.
So in preparation for this meeting, I think we had a few questions sent over. So maybe we'll continue to talk about the second question, which is how families enjoy Christmas. Although we touched upon it a bit, one of the important things, of course, is being able to enjoy that spirituality. But then on Christmas Day, we usually have a large meal, a festive meal. It's not like Thanksgiving where it's always turkey, turkey, turkey. Every family will have its own meal, but it will be one of the more difficult meals to create, one of the more laborious meals. And they'll usually celebrate it together. And then the family might take a break from cooking for the next 2 days as you go and visit all of your family members. And one of the things we appreciate, or I know I appreciate about living in Bethlehem, is that it's a very ecumenical community. My father was talking about being baptized in different churches, drawing wisdom from different churches, but also within the family. We might be, for instance, Greek Catholic, my mother brethren, my uncle Orthodox, family members from the Assyriac or Armenian church, but we still wait for each person's celebration to celebrate Christmas with them during that day. So for instance, my Orthodox uncles will come and celebrate Christmas with us on the 25th, and then we'll go and celebrate Christmas with him and his family on the 7th of January. And so there is this desire to celebrate with each other, but also to respect each other's own Christmases and spiritual, maybe holidays, events, dates, in a sense.
And I believe one of the most important thing is the family get together to make cookies for Christmas. And this kind of enhance the social, relationship among the family members. They cook together, they make special cookies for Christmas. And you might see 5 or 6 people together, spending more time together. And this really working together and listening to the hymns of Christmas. So the spirituality of Christmas, you could say, start with the Advent, 27th on November or 26th of November. And some of the churches really celebrate Advent, as we do in the office. We are ecumenical. Tomorrow we will have the 3rd Advent for Christmas. It is really a time of uplifting, transformation, recharging our spiritual batteries, and also to recharge the batteries in order to walk in the path of hope, and the path of justice, and the path of reconciliation.
And unfortunately, this year, with COVID being present, not only are our ceremonies and like the Christmas tree lighting ceremony or the midnight mass, we're not sure how attendance for that will be, but also visiting family is now going to be more difficult because, of course, you have loved ones and you don't want to be the cause of getting anybody sick. And so it's definitely going to change this year in terms of seeing each other and being together in this community, this religious celebration.
And one of the other things when we focus on our community, one of the things that we oftentimes say as Palestinians is we are very proud of our community and of our diversity and of that diversity that we're able to celebrate within this community. And so one of the things that we often do in different organizations, in different churches, in different institutions is kind of having these social campaigns where people are able to donate and people are collecting money, are collecting gifts for maybe children who are homeless, for families that are homeless, for families that are marginalized and living in poverty. And one of the things that we often do, and is we have our volunteers, especially our youth and our children, dressing up as Santa Claus to spread the Christmas cheer and going to some of the local orphanages. Unfortunately, with COVID this year, we aren't sure whether we'll be able to receive clearance from these orphanages, from these hospitals, to be able to spread Christmas cheer this way. But of course, one of the things we also pride ourselves in is being creative. And especially with technology and the availability of internet, even though we may be unable to go and visit each family member, we're going to be on the phone, we're going to be calling them, we're going to be Skyping, Zooming, and calling them over Messenger and being able to celebrate that way at least.
Maybe it's a good time to show about We Am at this moment.
Yes, so we have a short video of our work at We Am. So hopefully you can all see the screen. Here we go.
Conflict is an immutable part of society and also a necessary social process of change. We Am helps to resolve disputes within the Palestinian community by complementing the traditional Arab form of mediation called sulha with Western models of conflict resolution. Our main areas of service include women, youth, children, and international diplomacy. We Am pursues the principles of nonviolence, justice, and reconciliation through the following areas of our work. Through the work of sulha mediation, We Am seeks to bring constructive reconciliation to community disputes. The sulha process involves two or more conflicting parties seeking a neutral third-party mediator to resolve their dispute, and our staff takes on the role of the mediator. By doing so, We Am works to restore peace between conflicting parties, which allows those involved to move past the dispute and live their lives without seeking revenge. This ultimately benefits the entire community, reversing feelings of derision and replacing it with those of solidarity. The women's group works for gender equality, advocacy, and the abolition of all forms of oppression by empowering women to take a more active role in their community and in Palestinian society. We Am offers women in Bethlehem a space where they can form support networks and develop their leadership skills. As part of our women's program, we offer workshops and training in the fields of the democratic process, reproductive health, nonviolence, and conflict mediation. We also have a job creation program that aims to create opportunities to improve the quality of life among low-income women and enable them to sustain themselves and their households. Children are full of curiosity and passion for learning new things. At We Am, our young people are both intelligent and talented. They wish to apply themselves and channel their experiences into creative and educational pursuits. During our weekly children's group meetings, we provide children with educational classes on internet literacy, English, democracy, and national independence. We also offer programs in the creative and performing arts, such as drawing, painting, clay shaping, mosaics, music, dance, and drama. We Am takes every opportunity to expose young people to life outside of Bethlehem, with trips to museums, nature reserves, and nearby cities in the West Bank. The We Am Youth Program consists of a group of teens and young adults here in Bethlehem who participate in international youth exchanges, social activism, nonviolence training, and voluntary service. The weekly meetings provide opportunities for youth to discuss the problems they see facing the community and develop innovative solutions to those problems. Youth also learn about human rights, gender issues, and civil society empowerment. We Am Youth participate in international cultural exchanges with other youth groups, visiting groups in the United States, England, Denmark, Korea, Italy, Scotland, and more. We Am also works to promote international diplomacy. As a part of our cultural and educational tourism program, we host discussions and guide trips that offer groups and individuals unique insight into the complex social, political, and religious aspects of the Holy Land. We visit popular tourist sites as well as meet with locals in order to appreciate the diversity in this land. Visitors not only learn about the history and religious aspects of these locations, but also learn more about contemporary events, the politics of the area, and how the occupation affects the land and the people. A short list of some of our other programs include nonviolent peer mediation education programs in West Bank schools, our seasonal summer camp and Christmas Smiles program for youth and children, advocacy and nonviolent actions in the community, education on gender roles and society, as well as interfaith activities. For more information on our mission and programs and how you can get involved, please visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/WeAmCenter or our website. And if you are in Bethlehem, please stop by anytime. We welcome groups, both local and international, to visit and discuss the conflict, our hopes for the future, and share in some tea, coffee, or a meal. For specific inquiries, please contact our email address or our telephone number.
Yes, Saint Jerome, our compatriot, says that there are 5 Gospels in the New Testament. 4 in the New Testament, and the 5th when you visit the land and meet the people. So we really hope that to see you after COVID to visit, and we learn from our mistakes. There are rooms in the inn. You know, Christmas is a message of hope. Hope in the spirituality, but also in our daily lives. But this year is different.
Yes, continuing to COVID and maybe speaking a little bit about the political situation, one of the realities that we are faced with is, of course, there are 46,000 Palestinian Christians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, but because of the many waves of conflict, because of the many socio-economic political regressions that we have faced in history, there's a little over 500,000 Palestinian Christians from the West Bank simply living in 2 or 3 countries in Latin America. But also within this, there's a group of almost 200,000 Palestinian Christians who have Israeli citizenship. And it seems this year, the Israeli government came out 2.5 to 3 weeks ago with a decision that would make it illegal for any Israeli citizen to come into the West Bank or Gaza Strip, into the Palestinian territories under the ruse of COVID, even though the Palestinian workers continue to enter through the different checkpoints when they have permission into Israel to work. But also within this isn't just about Palestinians and the communities that exist within Palestine and Israel. It's also about families. You've heard about how important families are to this celebration. We have my mother, and she's out of 30,000 people who aren't able to live permanently with their families. So our mother was denied entry and banned from entering Israel. And since the borders are controlled by the Israeli government and Israeli military, we have been struggling since January to bring in my mother and for her to be able to be here with us, to be part of my sister's engagement in that celebration and joy, but also to be here with us so that we can celebrate Christmas as a family. And just 1 month and 1 day ago exactly, she was finally able to come after being denied entry and denied the request to entry about 4 or 5 times. And this is after having to pay almost a little over $20,000, which, to put into perspective, is 35 times the average monthly salary here for a typical Palestinian worker working the Palestinian territories. But with all of this, maybe we can say darkness or gloominess, we are a people that likes to celebrate life and celebrate joy. And part of this is our Christmas story. Part of this is Jesus being born in a stable in this humble place and then rising to be our salvation. Yes. And so within this, we always look for every opportunity to celebrate. And so we are happy to have my mother here with us, and of course continue to keep the 30,000 people and our brothers and sisters around the world, but also on the other side of the wall, in our thoughts and prayers, and hope that one day we may all unite. regardless of our religions, backgrounds, ethnicities, classes, etc.
Also, we should note that nowadays there are no tourism and no pilgrimage. So unemployment in this area is skyrocketing. Jobs are scarce, and many people have no job since March 15th. So it is a difficult time for many of us, many of the Palestinians. So it is a time of hopelessness and helplessness. So Christmas comes at a time to enhance the hope, to empower us, to strengthen our walk. You know, I always love this verse from the 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 8 to 10, which really depicts our situation exactly. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. So the hope is the message and the way of life, and we continue to celebrate life and not to celebrate death, in respect to all political calamity, economic deteriorating situation, as well as social misconduct and demoralization that we live in.
I could interrupt. There have been a number of questions. You've answered them actually in the course of your presentation, but number of questions just about the normal practice and then about this extraordinary time. First, on a normal, or as it's been the tradition, how do Muslims figure in with the Palestinian Muslims figure in with your Christmas celebrations? Are they part of those? And just say a little bit more about that aspect of life. And then there was also a question wanting to know if there was any relief for those merchants and tourist agencies and people who depend on tourism, if there's any kind of mechanism for them to receive some kind of help. So either of those questions, I guess both of them eventually.
Well, maybe I can start. To talk about how Muslims factor into the celebration or where their part is, we believe in inclusivity and we take every opportunity to celebrate diversity. Oftentimes, as Christians in Palestine, we look at the Bible as a holistic one piece. We go through the different seasons, but different aspects of the Bible pertain to our life as a whole, not just to Advent or to this season. And so oftentimes we remember the words of Paul, in which, now my Bible is in Arabic, so I'm translating it, so I hope you will forgive me for this. But there's a verse for St. Paul in which he says that Jesus didn't come for anyone specifically. There's no Jew or Gentile. Everyone is called, everyone is welcome. And this is how we treat every celebration here. We're talking about Christmas now, and so we will have our Muslim community, our Muslim brothers and sisters, our neighbors coming to our house, wishing us Merry Christmas, wishing us Merry Christmas in the streets, coming to the tree lighting ceremony, and even attending the Christmas Mass. And at the same time, when it comes to Muslim holidays, for instance, for Ramadan or such, we are celebrating with them as well. Because even though we may belong to different walks of faith, we belong to the same earth and to the same global community.
You know, in the past, the relationship between Christians and Muslims were much more stronger than nowadays. And in the past, you cannot really differentiate between a Muslim and a Christian. But nowadays, as a result of what's happening in the Middle East, in Syria and Iraq and in the Arab countries, sometimes of challenges and difficulties filtered in the mind of some people around us. But thank heavens, we are still the best example for coexistence. And it is really, many times we have people come to us to congratulate us on holidays and on Christmas and Easter and vice versa. So we would like to keep this light goes on despite of the dark forces here and there.
And how about just switching over to the economic impact of this crisis? What steps are being taken, if any, to alleviate that in Bethlehem and environs?
This is the weak point in our situation. I believe our government is in bad economic situation and has no resources to provide for those who lost their jobs, who lost their work, and who are not able to have their businesses go on. And you know, and the churches are also in a very weak position because their resources get less and less. So I am afraid that we are facing a big challenge, a big problem nowadays regarding the economy.
And if I may add to that, one of the problems that we face is especially Bethlehem, but a lot of the Palestinian territories depend on tourism and service type services, or that's a large part of our income, of our GDP, the service sector. And those are the two sectors that have been hit hardest by COVID because they are the two that require the least social distancing. So they require social interaction, physical social interaction. But one of the other struggles we face is that when it comes to our authority, the word authority in Palestinian Authority is a bit ironic because the Palestinian Authority oftentimes lacks authority. And for instance, the authority over the borders. And so anything entering and exiting the Palestinian territories, including from wiring and the financial markets, has to come through Israeli security and the bordering countries' security legislations and oftentimes taxation. But also within this, the Palestinian Authority did create a system in which those who were marginalized could apply, and they were given a very symbolic amount of 700 shekels. And so that would be right around $200. And that's the only amount they were given by the government for support since March. In March, we had 3 months of complete closure. And then we've kind of been going back and forth between semi being open and then complete closure. And we're entering a new complete closure tomorrow. So from this Thursday, for at least 1 week, we will be completely under closure, under lockdown, and will not be able to leave our houses.
Because we are a community-based society and the family is a viable socio-economic unit, if one person is working in the family, will cater for others. Despite that, we are moving to individualism, and this increases our difficulties and problems. I don't know how to solve it. Here is economical people around us, and the West also in bad shape. All the world is under this attack of COVID. So it is really very difficult, unique situation that we have never ever met.
And if I may just add one more point to that, and that is, this is to add a bit of hopefulness, but also a hint of gloominess. And that is the fact we are very lucky to be able to be inspired by everything around us. And one of the things that my grandmother, may she rest in peace, used to say, and she used to practice, is anytime she had a meal, she would cook a little bit extra, just in case a visitor would come to visit, and visitors were seen as angels. But also remember Jesus's word, even though he's being born as a baby right now, Jesus' words are still present within that baby. And Jesus says, whatever you do for the least of me, you do for me. And so part of the reason we've been able to survive, especially with an unemployment rate of over 80%, especially under the lockdowns, is because we still have that image of God that we see within each other, whether Muslim, whether Christian, whether atheist, and the community supports itself. But now, after 8-9 months of supporting ourselves, with many families not having an income, and with the basket of necessities increasing, the support we're able to provide to our neighbor is slowly dwindling. And so we are in dire need of being able to create a home-based economy, but also of finding means of solving this COVID pandemic and being able to resume life as normal especially because part of the reason COVID continues to rise in the Palestinian territories is because there's a large number of Palestinian workers who are dependent on crossing into Israel, which has had very few lockdowns and has much higher cases of COVID for their livelihood. And so they enter into the Israeli-controlled territories, make their money, bring the bread and bacon home, maybe, if you will, back to Bethlehem, and with that also bring the COVID sickness and disease, and then we continue to spread that amongst ourselves.
I have a couple of questions. Again, they're running the gamut here that we're receiving. One maybe for Elaine, and that is what are the possibilities of you receiving Palestinian citizenship? And perhaps a second one for you or for the rest of you, but particularly Elaine, since we relate to her as a U.S. citizen to some extent. What holiday treats do you find the most appealing? We'll go from that all the way to a question about the one democratic state and your views on that. And you can all address that however you want. But first, why don't we ask Elaine if she would be willing to share a little bit?
Sure. Zoughbi and I have been married now. We celebrated our 30th anniversary this past summer. And since we got married in 1990, we've been asking the Israeli government and military to grant us permission to live together and to give me national status so that I can live here with my husband without fear of being kicked out of the country. We have never received it. Now I'm only allowed to visit every once in a while for a period of 3 months, which is really not a sustainable way to, you know, continue on with a marriage and family. I mean, we're doing it, but we're not going to stop doing it. But in the long run, I hope something changes. Everything is on pause at the moment. The only glimmer of hope that I have, which is a very strange thing, is I do believe that at the end of this 3-month period that I will be granted an extension just because of the coronavirus pandemic and the fact that Jordan keeps closing their airport, so I can't go out through Jordan. They don't want me to fly out through Tel Aviv. So the easiest thing for them to do with me at the moment is just to extend my visa until after the pandemic. So that's what I'm hopeful for, is that they'll allow me to stay here until the virus is done.
Okay, and holiday treats for you or any of you? One specifically, ones that are notably Palestinian. We have one Palestinian who remembers certain holiday treats, and he wanted you to speak of them.
We have something called kike and mamul, and it's one of them is made from, well, they're made from semolina, and then one is filled with walnuts and spices, and the other is filled with dates, and they're sprinkled with powdered sugar. And so those are sort of a favorite treat at Christmas and Easter, in fact.
Okay.
They were for Easter, but nowadays many people are using it for both feasts. But also there is this special cookies. I don't know what to say about them. It is really also very wonderful taste and healthy in a way or another.
And then one of my favorite meals here for Christmas is a dish that we make with lamb and rice and a yogurt-based soup with almonds, fried almonds that we put on top. And so that's one of my favorite Christmas Day meals.
Okay.
Apologize for the vegetarian, by the way.
And a highly political question around one state solution, one democratic state, that campaign. If any of you would like to address that.
You know, it is, we become very easygoing people. You know, we hope that will be two-state solution. We hope that to live and coexist with others. But the problem, the state of Israel under Netanyahu doesn't want us to have our own state, does not want to divorce us or wed us. They want us to be as part of the apartheid system they are looking for. No win situation for us. If we say we want one state solution, the right wing in Israel will say, look, they want to liquidate the state of Israel. So in the meantime, we still believe in the two-state solution, despite the fact that Israel does not want to recognize us. I don't know if the new elections in Israel might be changed and they will go in this less traveled road of peace and justice. This is too much hopeful at this moment. I don't know what is going to be happening in the new elections and the result of it in Israel, and what will the new administration in the States, what kind of intervention will be happening.
And if I may add to that, we live in a very interesting time, not just in Palestine, but around the world. Different academics are starting to use terms such as the age of conspiracy. And throughout some of the readings that I've done, it seems that this conspiracy has less to do with actual hidden conspiracies, but is more telling of the separation and the gaps and the disparity that exists within or between different people. And so one of the things that we are quite mindful of is we had the Paris Protocol agreements, we had the Camp David peace agreements, we had the Oslo Accords, all of which seemed like they were working towards a just resolution that would help us build peace. But then we saw the reality of it. It's like the separate but equal. In theory, it may have sounded good before we knew it, before it was implemented as a system of discrimination, of institutional discrimination. But there's also another thing that we must consider. Oftentimes with contentious, especially political contentious topics, discourse really helps us steer clear of any profound meaning. And that is because we're oftentimes stuck on labels, one state versus two state. And one of the things that is made clear to us, but also to many Palestinians, is it really doesn't matter whether we are operating or living in the capacity of a one state or a two state solution. What matters is what goes into those systems. And the systems that we would accept and that we would choose to work towards are systems that respect everyone's rights, especially their human rights, regardless of their ethnicity or their national or group belonging, but also systems which allow for the freedom of movement. Even in a two-state solution, I cannot imagine being separated from the Sea of Galilee. It is integral to my Palestinian identity, but also to my spiritual identity as a Christian. I want to go and celebrate and see the land where Jesus walked. And also as a citizen of this world, as a Christian, I do not ever want to restrict Jews and Israeli Jews from coming and seeing the beauty of Bethlehem. But we need to be able to work through a system in which both of us, whether in a two-state, have the right to go and be protected while visiting the other controlled areas, or in a one state where we have the right to be and to exist with each other equally as partners, as people of the same community. And then the last thing maybe to add to this is it's also very important to have recognition. When we talk about the Christmas story, when we talk about Herod, it was important for the Bible to recognize the sorrow, the suffering that was caused to these children by this political institution. And for us, this means we need the recognition of our Palestinian suffering. And we also need, as a world, to recognize the global anti-Semitic history that we've faced, especially in the West. And once we're able to celebrate the suffering of all people, then we can begin to heal.
We become unreasonable reasonable. We believe to be on the table, at the table of negotiations. and to solve everything through nonviolent negotiations based on UN resolutions. Instead of being at the table, we become on the table. And what Israel wants is to have more geography and less Palestinian demography. And this is the problem, that Israel has not given up the idea of greater Israel. And especially at the time when Mr. Trump has recognized Jerusalem as the eternal unified capital of Israel, and also considered the settlements as legal, as well as when he visited the Golan Heights, the occupied land, he tried to legalize the occupation from other countries. That's really makes a lot of obstacles for us, and to put really a kind of stick in the wheels of negotiations.
And I'm going to add one last point. And my parents had the opportunity, and so did we, to take pride in ourselves as children and siblings. But I want to take pride in my parents. We are who we are because of their teachings, and we've been very fortunate to be raised in this peace and just loving family. And I'll never forget one of the things that my mother told me when we were young. When I was around 6th or 5th grade, my mother went to the States because her visa had expired, and my father had left for a conference the same day that my mother was supposed to return. And we waited for my mother, and she was not here. And then we later found out that they tried denying her entry to come and visit all of her children who were under the age of 18 at the time, or even of 16. And when sitting with my mom and asking her why, she explained it was because she was married to a Palestinian and because of the occupation. But then I said, well, is this the same for everyone? And she told me of one of her American friends who had married an Israeli Jew and had received the right and the citizenship, and was able to live with her family 1 year after the marriage. And now 30 years, and she doesn't have that. And as a very passionate and angry child, I said, that's not fair. She should suffer like we do. And my mother responded to me, and she said, no, it's not that they should be the same as us. It's that what we now see as privileges should be given to us as rights. We never want to bring those who have these rights and these privileges down. What we want to do is empower those who are marginalized, and we want to afford them the rights that they should already have and should be protected. And that is also in regards to the one state or two state solution. This is not about having Israelis live the same way that we do with the same restrictions that we do. It's about both of us, but especially for Palestinians who don't have these rights, to be able to enjoy these rights and to further work together to building a more inclusive, more diverse community or communities that continue to celebrate life and celebrate our common history as part of the Abrahamic monotheistic families.
Thank you. We're closing in on the hour here. I'm going to say just a word about our denomination's efforts on behalf of WIAM. We do have it as what we call an advanced special, which is a special way to give specifically toward the work of WIAM. And that number is, I'm going to expect you to remember this, but it'll be in the chat as well, 14910A, for those of you who are United Methodists. And we have numbered denominations who are part of us here, and they can, I'm sure they're supporting you in their own ways. We're coming to the end. I was wondering if you would be willing to just share perhaps a spiritual word with us, and then also a challenge. We have Christians and others here from around the world. What would you ask of us, and what would you advise us in terms of as believers to focus on here for us this Christmas season?
Since we celebrate the birth of Christ in this holy family, to focus on the family rights, to live together and to celebrate life together, because we refuse to hate.
And I would add, the Holy Family came to Bethlehem, found nowhere to live, and someone gave them a manger. And so I pray and ask that we all be able to be like that family, like that unknown individual who did something so simple as provide a manger, to do what we can, to do our part, to help bring about justice, to help people celebrate, to help people feel comfortable.
And just functions like these, just raising awareness and talking about it, rather than kind of just neglecting it and shoving it to the side, is something that provides Palestinians with a lot of hope, because it tells us that our story is being listened to and that our strife is also being heard.
Thank you all very much. Among the questions were many words of praise and thanks for you as a family and all that you've done. And so I'm expressing their gratitude to you and mine as well. We thank you very, very much for being a part of this. We've come to the end of our hour. We do try to close on time. I would ask that those of you who didn't get your questions answered, please do respond either to myself, United Methodist Kairos Response. We're pretty easy to find. Our information is out there, or to the Methodist Federation for Social Action, and we'll see that they get to the Zoughbi family so that you get an answer to your specific question. I apologize for not being able to get to all of them. Again, we thank you very, very much. We hope that you will remember not only the Zoughbis, but all the families in Israel and Palestine together this season, and indeed all the people who are suffering at this time during this terrible pandemic. God bless you all, and we will have time to chat a bit afterward if you'd like to stay on. It's pretty chaotic with so many people, but we'll, in just a moment or two, we will release you from your imposed mutes and allow you to speak. God bless you all. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.